The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Hey, selamat pagi.
Good morning.
And you are now listening to Durian ASEAN together with me, Arlene.
And Grace here.
And unfortunately, our friend Gauri, she can't make it because she has to register for her university. And all the best for Gauri. To start our news today, we want to talk about ASEAN. So
Yes.
ASEAN Economic Community is happening very soon, which is next year. As we all know, ASEAN could be the next EU, European Union. But ASEAN also has its own issues or limitations that it needs to overcome. And these are challenges that could widen certain inequalities, especially in terms of economy, because ASEAN, as we all know, has one of the huge population. If I'm not mistaken, it is more than 1 billion of population, which is important for ASEAN to look into how to address the issues of inequalities.
And also with the population growing, there is the issue of having inequality with the fewer jobs for women and men. And a lot of people are actually suffering in terms of employment in these particular countries in ASEAN.
This was highlighted at the Wall Street Journal, where the reporter interviewed a senior economist. His name is Sukti Das Gupta. He is the senior economist for the International Labour Organization and an author of the report about what countries will need to do to take advantage of the integration and where Indonesia stands in the process of integration.
I see. And also the 10 member states within the Association of Southeast Asian Nations will form a single market next year with the aim of easing cross-border trade and labor in the region of 600 million people. And also within the ASEAN economic community, the job growth was created within this ASEAN community will be trade, transportation, and construction. And much of these jobs are provided informally. So all those workers are more favored for men than women. So there is the inequality created by the job offered by this ASEAN economic community.
Definitely, especially you have people who are very skilled, who come from the middle class, have a lot of opportunity to move up the social ladder, and you have like a huge pile of people where they have to scramble for their lives day to day. They don't have good education. They come from very, very poor family. Some of them might not even have shelters. And you are not creating an equal level playing field. When it comes to equal opportunity, economic prosperity, one of the key criteria or mechanism is to create an environment where everyone can thrive, and this environment would definitely include education and training for all the citizens of Southeast Asia.
Yes, people need to learn to have the right skills, and also the jobs that are created there, it's quite a wide range. But then within this ASEAN community, they need to train for better education to grab the better opportunities.
Yes. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry to ask you this, but I have to know, like in South Korea, within just the span of 10 years, it was a very poor country. You have a lot of inequality. You even rise from a dictator's government to a more democratic system where everyone prospers. How did South Korea manage to be the way it is right
I
now?
will say South Koreans, we increased and also hyped up our economy within those 50 years of time, and which is really short compared to America and any other countries. Mainly because we really wanted to catch up the other developed countries' economy, and also we learned from how they actually progressed that far. So instead of we relaxing and then chill back, we studied and researched on the USA. since we are very close to USA, and how people actually worked for it, and what's the target, what's the aim to achieve the certain economic level. So that's when Korean people, we work really, really hard to achieve such
And the focus of young people is also important.
And also education is important. That's why education, their level is really, really competitive. Yes.
One of the question that was asked towards Sukti Dasgupta, was the question, what is the strength of Indonesia? And he answered that the strength is a huge population of young people. As we all know, countries like South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, the population are aging really fast. We are not producing we are not producing more kids to replace the older generation. But when it comes to Indonesia, it's a totally different environment. There are a lot more young people, but because there are a lot more young people, there are a huge number of youth unemployment. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, in a lot of countries, youth unemployment is a huge issue.
Yes.
When it comes to job opportunities, usually the young people will be at the loser end rather than the older generation, because they have the experience, the socio-economic stability and all that to support themselves.
Yes, also Indonesia has been very dynamic on the policy as well. And there are also many initiatives which are being taken in the medium term, like from what you see from the new government coming in, and also priorities and the focus that have been expressed are very much in line with what should happen for the Indonesia to take advantage. So I will say the training and educating people is very crucial in this area.
Hence, when it comes to transiting towards individual country to an ASEAN economic community, is to do a few restructuring. And from what it seems like, a lot of the Southeast Asian country has not yet prepared to restructure its economy. What it has been before this is to just create an environment that is thriving, that allows economic progress, but progress in a very narrow sense, not in a very wider sense.
Yes, and also nearly half of the gains in high-skill employment are expected to take place there, according to the study. And yet much of that employment will go to people who lack sufficient qualification due to insufficient training and lack of education.
So when it comes to ASEAN Economic Community, definitely a lot of improvement that needs to be done, especially to narrow the unemployment and employment gap.
Inequality, yes.
And
definitely.
the inequality between different socio-economic background of the society. Next, we move to Malaysia. As we all know, this very morning, someone will be charged under Sedition Act in Malaysia, and that person is the lecturer Azmi Sharom.
Yes, he is expected to be charged with sedition on which is today, over comments he made on an online portal over 2009 Perak crisis. And what is this Perak crisis about, and how did he make a comment about?
Interesting about the Perak crisis, because as far as I know, the Perak crisis was it shows that any political party coalition can form a state government as long as they have a majority support from the from the state assemblyman. And during the Perak fiasco, the break between the Pakatan supporters, the Pakatan Assemblyman supporters, as well as the Barisan Nasional Assemblyman supporters, were almost equal. And with just a few people jump ship towards the Barisan Nasional, suddenly it seems like the Barisan Nasional has a majority say in terms of the supports in the state assemblyman, and hence the reason why Perak government fell into the hand of Barisan Nasional.
So the article that he made was, "Take Perak crisis route for speedy end to Selangor impasse," Pakatan told. And it was also published in the online news that was on August 14th.
And when it comes to the Sedition Act, this is what the Eric Paulson from Lawyers of Liberty said. He said that Malaysia is a totalitarian state where no dissenting views were tolerated. And this was according to what the situation faced by Azmi Sharom.
Yes. So
And-
here we can actually question what is here in Malaysia in terms of freedom of expression, or to actually charge him under this Sedition Act.
Mhm. What do you think of Sedition Act? Is it something that is common in other country? As far as I know, in Malaysia, this is the act. This is a remnants act from the British era, the early era where you need people to support the new government and the king and the people in power. Hence, you have a Sedition Act where people cannot just simply say anything that they want. But when it comes in today's modern society, especially in Malaysia, you cannot just suppress different opinion just because it's not the most popular opinion.
Yes, that's also true, that I can agree that even though you're in the minority group where the majority group will not support your opinion, but you still have a right to raise your voice, to actually to express your thoughts and ideas regarding certain matters.
And in fact, we just need to know that when it comes to Azmi Sharom, he's not a politician. He don't just simply say whatever he wants. He's in fact a well respectable lecturer
Yes.
at a University Malaya, which is just
So
nearby our place.
Yeah, and under this section, anyone who utters any seditious words faces a fine over not more than 5,000 ringgit, and also jail term of not more than 3 years, or both if found guilty.
So it seems like in Malaysia, you can't really say anything that is different, especially when it relates to the king or the state or even the federal government.
Yes, that's true.
You have to keep your mouth shut.
And also he also added by saying, well, that's correct, I'll be charged, but we have to wait until after what's happening after today, because it may or may not happen. That's what he said, added. Yes.
And from what I hear, a lot of the people, especially the civil society, will be standing in front of the High Court today, in order to show their support towards Azmi Sharom. And to them is, we shouldn't use the Sedition Act. It should be repelled. And this is something that has been expressed by the civil society in this country for many, many years. To them, the Sedition Act is usually, it would be used for political purposes rather than for security purposes. Another news that is also a test for a country since the end of Soviet era, and I'm talking about Russia. Apparently, McDonald's is facing the biggest test there.
And apparently McDonald's is pretty famous overall, even in Malaysia and Russia. And then this particular brand is facing another problem in this country. So what's happening here in Russia? What about this McDonald's? What is it facing?
It's funny because I just had my McDonald's yesterday. And if you don't know the situation in Malaysia, people are boycotting McDonald's.
Yes, I've heard. Yes.
But for totally different reasons.
Exactly. And again, it's McDonald's in the other countries. Yes.
Well, for Russia, they are boycotting McDonald's for also
different purposes.
Different purposes. But of course, McDonald's is a symbol of capitalism. It's also a symbol of American power.
Yes, that's true.
When you have huge American power in a specific country, usually they will use the McDonald index, meaning that the more McDonald's you have, meaning that the more your country is actually a supporter of American
and it's also
power.
dominated. Yes.
It seems like Russian consumers are changing in the country of Russia. Many Russians are now convinced that McDonald's sells harmful food and deserve to be shut down.
So around like 12 of chain restaurants are closed down.
In fact,
right?
it has increased to 16 from what I saw in the CNN news yesterday.
Yes, I'm pretty shocked with the news. So I was quite speechless for a while. So what's happening in this country exactly is, so because of the McDonald's, a lot of McDonald's chains in this country, so it was ordered to close down around 6 chains so far. And while regulations have cited violation of these rules by McDonald's, the timing and then the scope of the shutdowns are seen as response to, like you said, the Western sanction in Russia. And not only this, but more than 100 restaurants are being inspected in terms of whether it's influenced by Western, yes, Western influences, and also meaning dozens or more in location could be under threat of closing.
Interesting. One question I have to ask you: do you love McDonald's?
I used to have a lot of foods from McDonald's and order a lot of foods from McDonald's, but because of the health issues and also want to maintain my figure, yes, so I'm trying to avoid it.
The one of the comment was from one of the Russian consumer. He said that as a consumer, the closing down of McDonald's isn't tragic. It means one less unhealthy temptation in my life.
It depends how you look at it. That's also true.
And in fact, like you said, it depends how you look at it. So another comment is, but from a political standpoint, I'm looking at this circus and think it's terrible. I think the closure hits consumer rather than McDonald's, said one of the consumer there. It seems like McDonald's. I think it's a symbolic boycott
It's
against.
more like a political standpoint that we can
against
see
American
from,
power.
Yes.
When it comes to McDonald's, its expansion into Russia was spearheaded by Josh Cohen, who founded the chain of Canadian businesses. Negotiation to open the country's first location began in 1976, while the Cold War was still underway. Interesting that. And the restaurant opened in 1990, a year before the collapse of Soviet Union. So it shows it's one of the penetration of American power towards Soviet Union or Russia in today's society. And it seems like for some Russian, this was heralded as the first step of opening the country for business and for foreign capital. These people may now see closure of McDonald's as a step in opposite direction. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, it says also it's been a really good market, the McDonald's itself for them. Historically, it's got a long history since it's established. But when you do business in a foreign country, there's also risk that you run into, and this will be one of the cases that we're facing.
I believe. I mean, this is based on my own understanding of whether we should or should not boycott. To me, just boycott for health reason. That would be a better reason. But it's true when it comes to McDonald's. It is a symbol of capitalism and it is a symbol of American power. Countries that do not have McDonald's, for example, North Korea, shows that they don't have any relationship with America.
Yeah.
Another situation that is happening in Russia right now is EU leaders or European Union leaders are delivering sanction ultimatum to Russia over Ukraine.
Yes, these EU leaders have given Russia a week to reverse course in Ukraine or force a new round of sanctions as Kiev warned it is on the brink of full-scale war with Moscow. And this sounds pretty serious and also quite scary.
A few countries has already not boycott, but put an economic sanction towards Russia. One of it is Australia. Australian citizens were some of the victims of the MH17, and they were rather angry at what had happened in Ukraine. So European Union leaders have given Russia a week to reverse course in Ukraine or face a new round of sanction. But it seems like the situation in Russia, Putin is not giving up.
It's not giving up, and also the fears are growing. Fears are growing. The confrontation on the EU eastern borders could engulf the whole continent after Russia sent troops to back a new offense by pro-criminal rebels in the southeast Ukraine. So these issues between the Russia and EU to have these issues to take over the Ukraine. That's correct?
Yeah. You see, from the standpoint of European Union, they want Ukraine to be an independent state on its own, managed by the Ukrainian government. But from the Russia standpoint, this is what Putin said. He called for immediate talks on the future of eastern Ukraine, meaning that he is calling for the first time the statehood of eastern Ukraine should be considered for the region. Seems like he do not want the Ukrainian government to control eastern part of Ukraine. He wants eastern Ukraine to be a country on its own.
But from what I read from this National Post is Russia is in a state of war against Ukraine, and also that is against a country which wants to be part of Europe, like you mentioned. And Russia is practically in the state of war against the Europe, and it's even becoming larger and bigger.
The thing about European Union compared to other individual countries like Australia, which can definitely put an economic sanction towards Russia without any further or without any complex consideration compared to European Union. This is due to Russia being the neighbor of European Union, and European Union and Russia have quite a close economic links. You cannot just ignore your neighbor. Like Malaysia cannot just ignore
Indonesia.
Indonesia is a huge country. We have a close link in terms of culture, in terms of food, and in terms of also economy. And that's one of the reasons why European Union leaders dare not to simply put economic sanction to Russia. I think they, if I'm not mistaken, they did selective sanction towards leaders or supporters of Putin. And family members of Putin himself, but they do not dare to simply sanction Russia altogether.
And also, the president of Russia also mentioned that the Russia itself is very close to the point of no return. And the point of no return is actually a full-scale war, and which is already happening in the terrorist controlled by the separatists. And that's what he told the news conference. And also today, we're talking about the fate of Ukraine. And then tomorrow, it could be all for all Europe.
That would be the case.
Yes.
It would definitely be the case. Another country that is now boosting tourism. Not Malaysia. Of course, we have the Visit 2014 Visit Malaysia tourism. But another country that is currently working on boosting tourism is Myanmar.
Myanmar, beautiful country, isn't it?
It is.
Yes.
Have you been there?
I have not been there, but I have a few friends living in there, and I really want to visit their country. And
it is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is very organic because it just opened its door in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. And the country itself has a lot of diversity that you would probably link in Myanmar to Malaysia because they have a huge population of different ethnic groups. Very
That's
multicultural.
a beautiful connection between Malaysia and
Very
Myanmar.
multicultural.
Yeah. So according to the hotel and the tourist authorities, the number of tourists arriving in Myanmar reached 1.6 million in the first 7 months of this year, up to 43% from the same period of last year.
One of the interesting tourist attraction, which personally, I regret that I haven't been there yet. I mean, I've been there for 3 times to Myanmar, but I haven't been to one
particular
place that I know I should go because it's one of the huge attraction. If it's not Myanmar, it would be like the whole of Southeast Asia. It's actually a place. It's actually a place called Bagon.
Bagan.
It's at the very northern part of Myanmar. And it is really breathtaking. You see a lot of different temples like as far as the eye can see.
Myanmar is based on Buddhism, so I'm sure there are lots of beautiful temples in terms of structure and the places and environment.
And it's unique because it's in the middle of nowhere, and you can see as far as you can all the different temples. It's as if it's like seas of temples. It's really breathtaking.
Wow. And what kind of temples do they have? Like, I can read from just the website. It says a golden temple, and the temples with a lot of natural sceneries.
They have a different name for their temple. Like in Thailand, it will be Wat, but in Myanmar, they call it pagoda.
Pagoda. Oh, pagoda sounds quite familiar.
What about in South Korea? What do you call your temple? Just temple?
No, we actually call it chul.
Chul.
It sounds a bit
cute name. So it's interesting that Myanmar is introducing e-visa, meaning that
Yeah.
you don't have to go all the way to KL just to make your visa. You can actually
More convenient.
on your bedroom just
And
click it.
definitely, yeah, it just attracts a lot of people to encourage people to travel to Myanmar. And this formal launch of this e-visa came after a trial period in August, just for a limited number of applicants. And now itself is expanding to larger population now.
I still remember it was a really bad experience back in 2009 when I first came to Myanmar. It was the military rule. To go to Myanmar, it's not easy. No one actually were allowed to go to Myanmar, especially if you're Americans. I'm not sure about South Korea, but when it comes to the countries where the foreigners that I met, the majority of them are businessmen or were there not for tourist purposes. So when I stepped in Myanmar the first time, I was actually relieved because I have to go through hours and hours of application for just a visa.
That's a long procedure.
Yeah, it was a long procedure. And the last time I went there in 2014, a couple of months ago, it was really a breeze. It was in fact the fastest ever visa
To apply for visa.
application.
So definitely Myanmar is looking at something better opportunities for people to come into their countries and also to introduce their beauties and the nice attractions in the country itself.
I would definitely encourage people to go to Bagan. It's beautiful.
So definitely one of my list. Yes.
And for the other parts of Myanmar, they also have very interesting attraction. They have very interesting food. The local food there is unique to their own culture. And guess what? They have their own version of roti canai, which they call it plata. And I'm glad that I really fulfill my Malaysian crave by eating their plata, although it tastes differently from Malaysia.
I see. And then another attraction that I can see is that there's a really long lake in Myanmar, which I don't know whether you have visited or not.
Is it Inya Lake?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, I visited it.
Oh.
It's in Shan State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct. So all these attractions, with introducing the e-visa to boost the tourism, I'm sure Myanmar can grow in terms of tourist attractions.
So go Myanmar. Well, that's all for our news today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Yes, and then listen to us and then tune in to our durianasian.com.
Yeah, and you can also listen to your mobile.
Yes.
By download the TuneIn app.
Oh, yes. As also, don't forget to give us feedback on our Facebook, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.